Oh, you didn't know? Do. You're but better call somebody. That's not PG. That's not PG. Yuji Naka is well known for creating the first three Sonic the Hedgehog games of the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. But did you know he also made or programmed for Phantasy Star? According to an interview with Retro Gamer magazine, issue 167, Naka describes the origins of Phantasy Star. I'm not sure if it was on the Commodore 64 or the Amiga, but there was a 3D dungeon RPG at the time. The dungeon was shown in a smaller box on the screen, so it wasn't the full screen. I was inspired by that, so I started experimenting on my own with the vision of trying to make a full screen dungeon, rather than running it in a box. It wasn't necessarily like an RPG strictly speaking. I wanted it to be a speedy, action-like game. The vision was the beginning of Phantasy Star. Issues with this. The vision was to have a 3D dungeon in full screen rather than in a little box, and I managed to get it running at the speed I had intended. But at the time I was experimenting, I wasn't mindful about hardware limitations. I was just doing an experimental build. I was able to smoothly go down the corridors and do quick turns, but then I experienced motion sickness. But this was the first time I had ever experienced motion sickness. Regarding RPGs versus action games, RPGs at the time weren't that hard to make. Really, I think action games were a lot harder to make sure that you got the proper feel of the game and you don't want the frame rate dropping too much, so to be able to maintain that was a challenge. With the action games, I really focused on how the user experience was. With RPGs, there wasn't such an issue in that sense, so my focus was really on the technical side. Dragon Quest versus Phantasy Star. He basically just summed up, well, quoting directly. I'll quote directly this part. Well, Dragon Quest was obviously very popular in Japan. Sold out. You couldn't have school days whenever Dragon Quest was coming out. To quote Naka, the RAM was broken, and in our game it also was. Data often got corrupted, turning the machine on and off. What Naka did was create a backup of the backup. So you quote him. So you get an error of the message that told you that your data had been corrupted, and after a couple of prompts, you get a message saying that your data had been restored. According to him, the core fans appreciated it compared to Dragon Quest. I mean, the save file, that was a big issue with Final Fantasy as well, so have that finally fixed after all those years. What are your thoughts? Like, comment, subscribe.